Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Right. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, it is my privilege to welcome you today to this virtual briefing on safeguarding human rights, ensuring accountability, and ending the unlawful occupation of Palestine. For those watching us on UN Web TV from around the world, my name is Coly Seck. I'm the chair of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People and the permanent representative of Senegal to the United Nations in New York. On behalf of the committee, let me express our appreciation to all of you for joining us today. The event is being recorded and streamed live on UN Web TV, and it will be also posted on the committee's website and YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, for 2 long years, the people of Gaza suffered immense, relentless bombing, widespread destruction, man-made hunger. We have been bearing witness to one of the most devastating conflicts in our time. The conflict has brought our international multilateral system to the brink of collapse. The destruction in Gaza was almost beyond comprehension. On October 13, the world welcomed the Gaza Peace Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, and we witnessed the first phase of the implementation of the ceasefire that must hold. Families celebrated as all 20 living Israeli hostages were freed. Nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners were released and returned to their families. Israel Defense Forces started a phased withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. In the following days, the remains of several Israeli hostages were returned. There is a fragile glimmer of hope. Ladies and gentlemen, our committee, which will commemorate its 50th anniversary on November 10, is mandated by the General Assembly to advocate for the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. Self-determination and the realization of an independent sovereign state of Palestine, with East Jerusalem as its capital on the basis of pre-1967 line. The two-state solution, with Palestine and Israel living side by side in peace and security within their secure and recognized borders, in line with relevant Security Council resolutions, remain the only viable path toward a just and lasting resolution of the Israeli-Palestine conflict. We are pleased today to have with us Mrs. Francesca Albanese, United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967. Mrs. Reem Alsalem, United Nations Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls. Mr. Ben Saul, United Nations Special Rapporteur on the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism, as well as Mr. Chris Sidoti, representing the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory. UN Special Procedure mandate holders have carried out extraordinary work. They continue to investigate and record events across the occupied Palestinian territory. They count for vast files and testimonies, distilling evidence and separating proven facts from claims and noise. This work does more than tell Gaza's story. It lays the groundwork for accountability after decades of unlawful Israeli occupation and more than 2 years of shattering conflict. Fresh language is hard to find. The disaster in Gaza and the occupied West Bank, driven by Israeli action, continues. United Nations human rights and international law experts speak to abuse and all sides. Their reports and statements detail atrocities and crimes against humanity by Israeli security forces and by Palestinian militants. Their work directly challenges the familiar accusations from critics of the UN efforts in the occupied Palestinian territory. The claims that UN experts, the Commission of Inquiry and Special Rapporteurs are biased. The evidence shows a broader balanced view. The committee condemns political attacks on the Special Rapporteurs and the Commission of Inquiry. These attacks undermine their efforts to document abuses, advocate for Palestinian rights, and promote accountability. The committee's position is clear. Accountability must apply to everyone. All victims must be seen and named. Breaches of international and human rights law demand condemnation no matter who commits them. Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to request the Permanent Observer of the State of Palestine to the United Nations, Minister Riyad Mansour, to deliver his remarks. Mr. Mansour, you have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for convening this meeting and for your briefing. And also, I want to thank the committee and my colleagues from the Bureau for being with us today to listen to our distinguished guests, the rapporteurs, and all those individuals that you have referred to who are with us today, and we welcome them. We express our appreciation for their continuous efforts for carrying their mandate in the benefits of the human rights of the Palestinian people and for highlighting magnitude of this genocide against our people and defending the rights of the Palestinian people, especially those who are in the occupied Palestinian territory, including the Gaza Strip. We also want to express our gratitude for the Division for Palestinian Rights in facilitating convening of this virtual meeting and all of the efforts that required to make that meeting a successful one that we hope that it will be. Collectively, after 2 years, this genocidal war against our people and the amount of suffering and destructions and criminality against the Palestinian people, especially in the Gaza Strip, we collectively succeeded in having a ceasefire, which is fragile, but it is our collective duty to make it permanent. And also it is our collective duty to succeed in having humanitarian assistance to our people, the scale that they need, all parts of the occupied Gaza Strip. And also it is our collective duty to help the Palestinian people in the reconstruction and providing temporary housing on the road of rebuilding Gaza to make it the beautiful part of the state of Palestine as it was, and even make it better. We acknowledge the exchange, the detainees and the Palestinian prisoners. We believe that all those who have loved ones in prison should not continue to suffer that way, and all prisoners, especially Palestinian prisoners who are now close to 10,000 prisoners, be released, including those well-known leaders among the Palestinian people. After serving tens of years in jail, they deserve to join their families and to play their leadership role among the Palestinian people. Now, of course, what we call the political horizon, it is the duty of all of us not to take us back to October 6 and the period before that. This illegal occupation, as articulated by the ICJ, after our tenacious work and determination, with large number of people and countries, in which we prepared for it for almost 10 years. It was not given to us as a gift from anyone. It required hard labor from all genuine people, led by the Palestinian delegation and the Palestinian lawyers that produced that historic advisory opinion that called for many things, including that this illegal occupation has to be terminated as rapidly as possible. And the General Assembly legislated that it should be terminated in 1 year. And it also asked for modalities so that the international community to act in a concrete way in order to bring this illegal occupation to an end. And within that context, the International Conference on the Two-State Solution, led by Saudi Arabia and France, and with the support of the 142 countries to the New York Declaration that contains the comprehensive details, along with the annex that will lead to the end of this illegal occupation and the Palestinian people to exercise self-determination and to make the state of Palestine independent, sovereign, in control of its land, with East Jerusalem as its capital, in order to implement the global consensus on the two-state solution, is our responsibility to continue on this path and to mobilize the efforts that we welcome from all groups, from all civil society organizations, from the millions, maybe the hundreds of millions of people demonstrating in the streets, the Hague group, the NAM group, the Madrid group, the Global Alliance on the Two-State Solution. It is the lessons of the struggle against apartheid is to mobilize every force, not to exclude anyone, determined to contribute to the struggle for the liberation of the Palestinian people and the liberation of the state of Palestine. We welcome all of them. We appreciate their efforts. And we just beginning on the more difficult stages ahead of us. We need to work harder. We need to unify the largest possible forces with us in order to succeed in not allowing Netanyahu and the thugs who are in the government with him to dictate the pace of the future of the Palestinian people and the future of the occupied Palestinian territory in Gaza. It is the Palestinian people, in exercising their right to self-determination, who will determine the future of the Palestinian people and their state. And they also put an end to the illegal settlements, not to allow for illegal annexation to take place, and for all of the Israeli forces to withdraw, not only from the Gaza Strip, but also from the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory, so that Palestine can be free and the Palestinian people to live in freedom and dignity. In this connection, again, we welcome and appreciate the effort of the rapporteurs and all of our guests who are working in a principled way in advancing the cause of the Palestinian people to have their rights and to defend their human rights in the occupied territory. And we will continue to work with them for that noble cause. And we stand with them and we defend them from those, especially the Israelis who are attacking them and others, from carrying their mandates and from helping the Palestinian people reach the objectives that the Palestinian people are struggling for. It is about the Palestinian people. It's not about us as individuals, but it is about the rights of the millions of the Palestinian people and their freedom in the occupied territory, that all of us are engaged in this process for the Palestinian people, defending the Palestinian people who are paying the ultimate price that is beyond the capability of humans even to comprehend. When you lose more than 200,000 Palestinians killed and injured in Gaza alone during the course of the last 2 months, most of them are children and women. It is about them, number one, about them, number two, about them, number three, about them all the way through. And it is not about any individual of us, in spite of the heroic effort that all of us are adding to the help and to the struggle of the Palestinian people. And I am very confident that, inshallah, soon that the Palestinian people will prevail and try to put this nightmare behind us, this genocide behind us, and those criminals who caused this suffering of the Palestinian people to face the justice and to pay the price for the crimes committed against our people. We will never forget, and we will never forgive all those who did these things against our people. But yet we need to make this end of the fighting, end of the aggression permanent in order to be able to move forward in the direction of objectives of Palestine. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and I want to add my voice to you welcoming our guests.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mansour, for your statement. I will now give the floor to each of our experts for briefings on their respective topics and areas. After these interventions, I will open the floor for questions. Let us now start with our first briefer, Mrs. Reem Alsalem, who has been United Nations Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls, its causes and consequences since 2021. Mrs. Alsalem is an independent consultant on gender issues, the rights of refugees and migrants, transitional justice, and humanitarian response. She has consulted extensively for United Nations departments, agencies, and programs such as UN Women, CHR, UNICEF, and IOM, as well as for non-governmental organizations, think tanks, and academia. Previously, she worked as an international civil servant, serving with UNHCR in 13 countries. Mrs. Alsalem, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Ambassador Riyad Mansour, my fellow panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor and a privilege for me to address this committee today, although, of course, I would have loved if it had happened in better circumstances, as it's quite alarming and shameful that as we are meeting here today, the deliberate killing of Palestinians, including women and girls, has not ceased, despite the fact that there is a quote-unquote ceasefire in place, yet hundreds of Palestinians continue to be killed. As it's my first meeting with you, I have to admit that since becoming a mandate holder, I have never confronted a situation as daunting as the one we had since October 2023. Documenting the human rights violations of the last 2 years and acting on them has been a challenge beyond description, primarily because it has been impossible to do justice to defining and describing the crimes and horrors that Palestinians, including women and girls, which are under my mandate, have been subjected to. As I have been saying, it is my belief that the current legal terminology, the concepts, and the legal frameworks that we have are inadequate in front of the monstrosity and the scale and the horrors of what Palestinians have been going through, particularly over the last 2 years, and including women and girls. Just to give one example, it became very clear to me that referring to the deliberate mass killing of Palestinian women, because they are both Palestinian and female, could no longer be adequately encapsulated by the term and the concept of femicide, which, as we know, is what describes the deliberate killing of women and girls because they are female. Instead, it was clear to me that the mass killing of Palestinian women and girls was happening with the intent to destroy them, and through them, the larger group to which they pertain, the Palestinian people in whole or in part. In other words, it was clearly a tool of genocide and in the service of it. Hence, I characterized in my last report to the Human Rights Council the killing of Palestinian women as femi-genocide, which is a term that was first coined by an Argentine anthropologist, Rita Laura Segato, to describe precisely what I've just described: the systematic violence against women rooted in patriarchal, racial, and colonial power structures. Now, if we look at the bigger picture, in fact, every act committed by Israel was geared to serve the overall objective of destroying the Palestinian people and ethnically cleansing Gaza and also the wider Palestinian occupied land. That is why every sector and other colleagues of mine working on thematic issues have also struggled with terminology and have also described things like ecocide, environmental destruction through toxic weapons, domicide, intended erasure of homes, scholasticides, the deliberate and mass elimination of schools and destruction of education. And I even know of the description used to describe the collapse of international law due to Israel's impunity, legal side. Moreover, and after the beginning of the genocide, it has become very clear to me also as a mandate holder, from observing and studying the modus operandi, scale, and intent, that reproductive violence was very much used as a genocidal tool in Gaza. Again, therefore, as a deliberate tool to impose measures to prevent births within the group, as described by the Convention on the Prevention of Genocide. And I was very glad that South Africa included that in its legal brief and arguments in front of the ICJ, and that the ICJ also made a reference to this article. And I was also very pleased that the Commission of Inquiry on Palestine reached the same conclusion, elaborating in one of its reports in detail how Israel has systematically targeted reproductive health facilities, maternity hospital clinics, including the IVF clinics, destroying access to life-saving care for women and infants, not to mention what we have all documented, including myself shortly after the start of the onslaught on Gaza, the widespread and rampant sexual violence, torture, arbitrary detention, forced disappearance, and psychological violence being inflicted on men, boys, women, and girls. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, I know we might sound like broken records, but we cannot underestimate the enormous damage that is being inflicted on the international legal framework and the rule-based order. What we have said repeatedly is, and it continues to be relevant today, is that what happens in Palestine does not stay in Palestine. The fact that crimes against Palestinians, including women and girls, can continue with such impunity has shown the weakness also of the feminist discourse and feminist policy. For all the concerns that are raised about global regression in the rights of women, or the pushback as we hear, the continuity of the killing of Palestinian women and girls in the thousands and the infliction of horrors on them is really the most defining moment that declares that the world no longer cares, in fact, for the lives of women and girls or their safety or their dignity. And we already see the ramification of the normalization of such brutality elsewhere, most recently in Sudan. It's as if what is happening in Sudan is using the playbook of what was inflicted on women and girls in Gaza. And it is really, really alarming that after 2 years of the world watching a genocide unfolding on its screen, we have normalized it to such an extent that no one now bats an eyelid about what is happening to women and girls in conflict and crisis situations elsewhere. So as I said, what happens in Palestine does not stay in Palestine. It has also exposed the double standards in the feminist discourses of organizations and states alike. I continue to find it very disappointing that despite the wide documented sexual violence that has been committed by Israel and its forces against Palestinians, including women and girls, states have continued to be very timid on this issue and not to address it, including those that have feminist foreign policies. And we have seen also how this discourse on human rights has also shattered with the reaction to the pro-Palestinian movements around the world. Female human rights defenders that have been detained and imprisoned, including those participating on the flotilla, have been subjected also to very gendered punishment and consequence and violence. Now, since this session is also about accountability, I would just like to reiterate one point. In my view, and this does not apply only to what has happened in Gaza or the West Bank recently, but really is relevant to the last 8 decades of Palestinian, of the dispossession of Palestinians since the Nakba. In my view, there is an insufficient consideration of how Palestinian women and girls experience these oppressions and realities in the ongoing accountability processes. So in the deliberations of international courts and prosecutors, and also some human rights mechanism. So if I can mention one example, the ICJ advisory opinion of July 2024 on the legal consequences arising from Israel's policies in the OPT failed to mention the very specific and distinct ways in which Palestinian women and girls are affected by Israel's occupation and apartheid, especially regarding family life, freedom of movement, access to health, including reproductive health rights and vulnerability to violence. Also, the General Assembly resolution that reaffirms the findings of the ICJ advisory opinion of July 2024 was also sex and gender blind. Now, this is, in my view, a lost opportunity. We have to document and do justice to the specific gendered experience of Palestinian women and girls, which constitute, after all, half of the Palestinian people, and demand accountability and reparations for them. And we should perhaps also start with the Palestinian women detainees that were also recently released as part of the ceasefire arrangements. Even the last advisory opinion by the ICJ, rendered in October 2025, made only one reference to the fact that by withholding assistance, humanitarian assistance, Israel had breached its obligation under CEDAW, which requires it to ensure non-discrimination in accessing health services for women. But again, in my view, this is not enough. And this sex and gender blindness when it comes to accountability procedures for Palestinians must be reversed. I also would like to mention that with regards to states that continue to cooperate with Israel, including through the export of weapons, they also are violating their international obligation towards women and girls set out in the various international instruments. And we have to continue to hold also these states accountable because these obligations are also included in their own national export risk assessments. They are under obligation not to export arms to places and to countries or actors that commit violations against women and children. And this is one of the recommendations I also made in my report to the UK after my visit in 2024. I think the priority right now also is to ensure that independent human rights mechanisms like ourselves can access the occupied Palestinian territories, and that we are able to also document the horrors that were committed on October 7th and since October 7th against all Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Alsalem, for sharing with us this important update on the violence and atrocities that Palestinian women and girls are subject to. Thank you very much for this update and briefing. I will now give the floor to our next briefer, Mrs. Francesca Albanese, UN Special Rapporteur. She's an international lawyer specialized in human rights in the Middle East. Since May 2022, Mrs. Albanese has served as United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967. The academic works cover various aspects of the question of Palestine, the legal situation in Israel and Palestine, and Palestinian forced displacement, including the mandate and work of UNRWA. Mrs. Albanese, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I regret not being with you, as I would have done under normal circumstances today, and this is due to the travel ban imposed on me by the US administration. What is my crime? Having done my job, having delivered what I have to, 6 reports, 7 now, to the United Nations, bringing to the fore the fact that enlighten the kind of crimes, the gravity, the depth of crimes that Israel is committing and increasing with the complicity of a variety of actors. The report that caused the sanctions that remained still unaddressed, and for this I don't blame the United States alone. I think that it's absolutely necessary that the international community acts in unison to make sure that the sanctions are lifted, and this ad hominem measure is not repeated against anyone else. But in the face of this, the responsibility is also of member states, and I agree with a colleague who has spoken before me. The gravity of the situation today speaks to a vulnerability that is becoming bigger and bigger within the United Nations system. That a UN mandate holder who serves pro bono the United Nations on the basis of trust, knowing that he or she will be protected by the organization, is one. There is also 2 years of attacks against UNRWA that finally have been clarified by the International Court of Justice itself. There are the continuous attacks against anyone who speaks on behalf of the oppressed, and anyone who tries to advance justice, and this is unacceptable. So what is that I would have shared with you in person today? After the presentation of my report yesterday, and you saw the level of attacks that even that report has elicited. I've been accused of witchcraft, no less. I could have been accused of anything because my reports are written by a human being. So I would be happy to see for once anyone engaging or critical of me, engaging on the substance of my reports. And it has not happened. Israel has accused me of witchcraft in 2025. Because this doesn't only have to do with who I am as a voice extremely critical of Israel, extremely critical of apartheid Israel, and who's tired of seeing mothers, fathers, and children slaughtered every day, using and misusing even concepts of international law. And today, under the banner of peace, 200 Palestinians have been slaughtered in Gaza, and no one looks today because there is a ceasefire. This is the meaning of ceasefire according to Israel. And for denouncing all this and the system of complicity that upholds it, a woman, because this is witchcraft is something that is primarily addressed to women. People like me, up to a few hundred years ago, would be burned in a public square for speaking truth. All the more speaking truth to patriarchy and to power. We are still there, where a man who represents an entity, a state in this case, which is committing crimes, as it breathes, accuses a woman of witchcraft. And the fact that the Israeli ambassador was allowed to speak and go on with its runs for 7 minutes without being stopped tells a lot also about the august institution that you are part of, not able to lift the sanctions against a person protected under the Convention on Privileges and Immunities, not able to stop the representative of an apartheid state turning genocidal, because this is what Israel is an apartheid state that has turned its settler colonialism into genocidal to respect the basic principles of the institution it's part of. But this is the core of the matter, and this is what I would like to insist now. It's in a context of sustained and intersecting violations of peremptory norms of international law that Israel's settler colonialism has been allowed to fester, that the apartheid has been consolidated and normalized. And member states have, with few exceptions, have done not much to prevent genocide, to stop genocidal acts, and to punish all the crimes connected to this genocide, from incitement to execution. And so the genocide continues. But my last report tries to add something more. I looked at what member states have done, especially in the last 753 days, and I realized that again there has been more support than deterrence toward the acts of genocide that Israel has been committing. And in fact, the international community has enabled it through diplomatic fora that, instead of serving peace, have been used to advance dehumanizing language against the Palestinians, or legitimizing Israel's false claim from self-defense to fighting against terrorists or human shields. We keep on seeing this. The betrayal of the very function of the United Nations preserving peace by using international law. Israel claims self-defense for the soldiers who are killed in the Gaza Strip, but this is Palestinian self-defense. I'm sorry, but the Palestinians, Israel cannot claim self-defense in the land that occupies over and over. And the military ties that many states in the General Assembly are still still have with Israel, make them responsible, and the men and women who are in government in those states personally liable, because transferring or buying weapons, intelligence, and having joint trainings with genocidal states shows intent and leads to complicity. And of course, trade. How come that after 2 years of genocide, member states continue to have businesses with Israel, primarily Western states, but not only, including states in the Arab region. How come? And I have to say, it pierces my heart, especially I've just come back from South Africa, where I've had some very few and uplifting days, reminding myself of how important is the struggle for Palestine, which was at the core of the South African struggle, but don't think that we have appreciated enough what Nelson Mandela used to say. Our struggle, our freedom is not complete without the freedom of the Palestinians. Because the Palestinians, like South Africans in the end of the apartheid situation, were and are the victims of European settler colonialism, and are paying the price for it, and are being tested, they are treated as guinea pigs of an experiment that keeps on going. And this is not against the Palestinians themselves, and it's not against the UN themselves. It's transforming the very Arab region into a project for decolonization, because we have been fooled by the idea that we have a settler colonialism. Greater Israel, it's not about the expansion of physical border. Greater Israel is the expansion of dominion and a concept of subjugation, and the Arab region is already falling into this. Because if we look at many countries that in the past 20 years have been put on their knees, from Iraq to Libya, to Lebanon and Syria today. This is the realization of Greater Israel in the bigger scheme of US imperialistic dominion. This is happening under our watch, under your watch. And look at, this is the last point I wanted to raise, the humanitarian function, the fact that for 7 months, the humanitarian aid, instead of being delivered only and according to the principles that had been set including by the International Court of Justice, Israel had to allow unfettered access of humanitarian aid. Aid has been the distribution of aid has been left in the hands of the state which was committing genocide, and the state was its partner in crimes, the United States. This is the situation. I mean, the Palestinian sacrifice mirrors the incapacity of the international community to come together and deliver the promise of the UN Charter and the United Nations as a whole, this organization that has just turned 80. Excellencies, this institution is not in a good shape. And what happens to Palestine, what happens to the people in Sudan, what happens to the people in Congo, speak the same language. The United Nations is not able to preserve peace and stability and prosperity and to realize human rights. This is the brutal reality. And it's becoming, as I've said already 1 year ago, more and more irrelevant to the younger generations. They are not like mine, believing in this ideal world represented by the United Nations, which was there to prevent horrible crimes, including genocide. After 2 years of watching the Gaza genocide and the dispossession of the Palestinians wherever they are, the blaming of the Palestinians wherever they are, including in the United Nations, this is, for many, not just trauma, it's memory in the making. And we still have time, we still have a little time to recover, but we need to do the right thing. And for this, we need principled and united United Nations, made also of the countries who broke the chains of colonization, of colonialism decades ago, that today are not as strongly aligned with the quest for freedom of the Palestinians as they should be, as they are naturally called to be. And I want to close on this sober note, calling for a moment of reflection on where the United Nations, not just for Palestine, but for all of us, should go next. Thank you.
Mrs. Albanese, I thank you very much for your intervention and for the very important and frank briefing on the situation in the OPT. Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to our next briefer, Mr. Ben Saul, the Special Rapporteur on the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism. He took up his functions on November 1st, 2023. He is a Vice Chair of International Law at the University of Sydney and an expert in public international law, particularly counterterrorism law, human rights and refugee law, the law on the use of force, international humanitarian law, international criminal law, and United Nations law. He has published 20 books and hundreds of coloring and other articles and has been awarded numerous research grants. Mr. Saul, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. I'm pleased to join you from London, where, among other things, we are challenging the British government's ban on Palestine Action, which is a social protest movement which stands in solidarity with Palestinian rights worldwide. I want to focus my remarks on the future of the peace plan and its compliance with international law. In my mandate, we've been tracking for many years and documenting Israeli violations of international law in the name of counterterrorism. And I'm deeply concerned that elements of the plan are destined to fail to bring a secure and lasting peace. With other mandate holders earlier in the year, we set out our key concerns about the peace plan. We welcomed, of course, that there is a permanent ceasefire, the rapid release of hostages and unlawfully detained Palestinians, some of them, the opening of humanitarian aid under United Nations supervision, that there would be no forced displacement from Gaza, the withdrawal of Israeli forces, and the non-annexation of territory. Now, all of these things, by the way, are requirements of international law and shouldn't depend upon negotiations and other parties giving these things to Palestinians. But we were very concerned that key elements of the plan are deeply inconsistent with fundamental rules of international law, including those set out by the International Court of Justice in the advisory opinion last year, and indeed the most recent advisory opinion from the court. Imposing a peace at any price, regardless of law and justice, is a recipe for further injustice, violence, and instability. So as this peace plan gets implemented, it's absolutely vital to remedy its flaws in order to ensure that peace comes with justice and respect for international law. Our first concern, obviously, is that the plan does not guarantee, ultimately, Palestinian self-determination, statehood, and self-governance. All of these are conditioned on vague preconditions about Gaza's redevelopment, Palestinian Authority reform, dialogue with Israel. And so Palestine's future is put at the mercy of decisions made by outsiders and is not in the hands of Palestinians themselves, as international law requires. By requiring further negotiations with Israel, it preserves the failed status quo, which has not worked since Oslo. And we know that the Israeli Prime Minister has already declared that Israel would forcibly resist statehood. This is not a peace plan. It's blatantly against the International Court of Justice's finding that fulfilling the right of self-determination cannot be made conditional on negotiations. The temporary transitional government is not representative of Palestinians and even excludes the Palestinian Authority, further lacking legitimacy and violating self-determination. There are no concrete benchmarks or timelines for a transition to representative governance, which belongs to Palestinians alone. Oversight by the so-called Board of Peace, chaired by the US President, is not under United Nations authority or under transparent multilateral control. when we know that the United States is a deeply partisan supporter of Israel and not an honest broker. This proposal is regrettably reminiscent of colonial practices and must be rejected. An international stabilization force outside the control of Palestinians and the United Nations as a guarantor would replace Israeli occupation with a US-led occupation, as well as a continuation of partial Israeli occupation in so-called buffer zones. And there's no timeline for an absolute or unconditional Israeli withdrawal. The demilitarization of Gaza has no end date, and if permanent, could leave Palestine vulnerable to future Israeli aggression, when we know there's a long pattern of Israeli aggression in Palestine and indeed elsewhere in the region. Nothing is said about placing military constraints on Israel, which has committed protracted unlawful occupation and international crimes in Palestine and further afield. Gaza must de-radicalize, but all of the hateful, inflammatory, genocidal rhetoric against Palestinians and Arabs on the Israeli side is not addressed at all in the plan. The plan treats Gaza in isolation from the West Bank, not as a single unified territory. The economic development plan could result in illegal foreign exploitation of resources without Palestinian consent, as we've seen in previous occupations led by the United States. There's no duty on Israel to compensate Palestinians for illegal war damage. Why should Arab states or the Europeans pay for illegal damage inflicted by Israel? The plan provides for the release of all Israeli hostages, but only some of the many thousands of arbitrarily detained Palestinians. Amnesties given to some Hamas members appear to be unconditional, even if they committed international crimes, thus denying justice for victims. Above all, what is incredibly striking about this plan is that it does not address accountability at all for Israeli international crimes and serious human rights violations against Palestinians. There's no commitment to transitional justice, truth-telling, or reconciliation. And we know from many past conflicts that accountability and justice are absolutely essential to a sustainable peace. The plan doesn't address other fundamental issues like ending Israeli illegal settlements in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, the resolution of borders, compensation, refugee return. And the plan, above all, doesn't provide any leading role for the United Nations through collective security under the Security Council, controlled by the General Assembly, or even a resumption of the leading role of UNRWA in assisting and protecting Palestinian refugees. Any peace plan must respect the ground rules of international law. The future of Palestine must be in the hands of Palestinians, not imposed by outsiders under extreme conditions of duress. The International Court of Justice has been crystal clear. Conditions cannot be placed on Palestinian self-determination. The Israeli occupation must end immediately, unconditionally, with due reparation made to Palestinians. The United Nations, not Israel or its ally, the United States, has been identified by the International Court as the legitimate authority to oversee the end of occupation and the transitional towards a political solution that guarantees self-determination. Excellencies, in conclusion, I just want to state once again my profound rejection of the United States' sanctions on my dear colleague, the Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territory. I call on all states to denounce those sanctions and for the United States to immediately lift them. I also condemn the remarks this week in the General Assembly by the Israeli ambassador, deeply sexist and hateful and toxic remarks, which have absolutely no role and are absolutely unacceptable in international diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thorne, for sharing this very important update with us. Thank you very much. The last contribution will come to us via the recorded message. Our next speaker is Mr. Chris Sidoti, a member of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel. Mr. Sidoti is the founder of the Special Advisory Council for Myanmar and was one of the members of the UN Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar. He has also provided consultancy services on human rights law to OHCHR, UNDP, and UNICEF, among others. He could not attend today's event, but kindly recorded a video message, which will be played now.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. On behalf of the Commission of Inquiry, I'm very pleased to have this opportunity of joining you today at this meeting. This meeting this week marks the end of the terms of the first group of commissioners on our Commission of Inquiry. It's an appropriate time for us to reflect back on our work over the 4 years that we have been part of the Commission, but particularly over the last 2 years. Our final report to the General Assembly, produced this week, is very much the culmination of our work over this particularly last 2-year period. The period since 7 October 2023, when Palestinian militants attacked kibbutzim, military bases and a music festival in southern Israel, and the Israeli military and government responded with enormous force in a 2-year offensive on the people of Gaza that is only now come to a pause. Since 7 October 2023, our Commission has been focusing very much on developments in Gaza, but also on the implications in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. We started by looking at those events on 7-8 October 2023 and on the first few months that followed them. We found, for example, that Palestinian militants had committed war crimes in southern Israel during the course of their attacks on those first 2 days. And we also found that Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip over those first 3 months committed war crimes and crimes against humanity. Our work has looked at different sectors of Gazan society. We examined the concerted attacks that have sought to destroy the healthcare system, the attacks on education, sex and gender-based violence. We have looked at destruction of cultural property, churches, mosques, museums, libraries, archaeological sites. In our report this week to the General Assembly, we have looked at the destruction of housing and land clearance operations. In all of those reports, we have found that the Israeli authorities, civil, political and military, have been responsible for the commission of war crimes and crimes against humanity. In this report to the General Assembly, we also look at the issue of genocide. Our approach throughout the 2 years has been a standard legal approach. We have found the facts, we have formed conclusions, and we have applied the law to the facts as we have found them. That's how we came to conclusions relating to war crimes and crimes against humanity. Consideration of genocide requires a much more comprehensive examination, and that has been possible only now, when our various sectoral investigations have been completed and reported. Because the reports to the General Assembly are so strictly limited as to words, less than 10,000 words now, we felt that we could not do justice to the issue of genocide in the General Assembly report. And so we dealt with it comprehensively in a report more than 70 pages in length, released a couple of weeks ago in Geneva. And we have summarised those findings in our report to the General Assembly presented this week. We have found that the facts that we have come to, arising over the last 2 years, constitute genocidal acts in 4 of the 5 categories of genocidal act specified in the Genocide Convention. We also examined the question of genocidal purpose and found that both directly and indirectly that purpose had been established. Genocide is a very serious international crime. So too are war crimes and crimes against humanity. And having found these crimes having been committed, war crimes in southern Israel on 7-8 October 2023, war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide in Gaza, we call for accountability. There can be no peace without accountability. There can be no justice without accountability. That is perhaps the most important message coming from our report. We hope desperately that the fighting has come to an end, that people both in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Israel, have a chance to recover from the traumas that they have suffered over these last 2 years. We know, however, that there can be no lasting peace without the full involvement of the people themselves, Palestinian and Israeli. It's not for outsiders to impose peace, because that won't be a true peace. It will not be a lasting peace. This first commission, we first members of it, complete our term expressing that hope for true peace in Israel and Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now listened to distinguished colleagues to all of our distinguished briefers, whom I thank for their pertinent statement. I would like now to open the floor for comments and questions by committee members and observers. We will collect 2-3 questions first. Ambassador Faisal, do you want to take the floor?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. And thank you also for to the Unit of Palestinian Rights for organizing this very useful briefing. Thank you, Minister Riyad Mansour, for his briefing, but I also would like to especially thank and commend the courage, commitment, and valuable work of the special mandate holders. Malaysia will continue to stand in solidarity, support, and defend the critical work of the mandate holders, including the COI. Thank you for the very clear, insightful, and compelling presentations, which raised so many important points for us to ponder this morning. And I wish we had the opportunity to meet in person so that we can have a much more in-depth discussion and much more free-flowing discussion. And I look forward to the day when that can happen. I have so many questions, but probably I just want to raise one question this morning. I mean, given the constraints of the UN system that we are seeing, what do you think would be the ideal pathway that member states can work on to ensure the end of illegal occupation, proper accountability, and also the full self-determination of Palestinian people, given all the constraints that we have in the UN system at the moment, and also the realpolitik the prevailing realpolitik. How can we focus our energy on, what would be the pathway that we should work on? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ambassador Faisal. The dear briefers, the floor is open for you for comment, the reaction.
Excuse me, Chair. Did you call for comments?
Yes, if you want to comment, yes.
Gladly so. And also I wanted to salute the permanent representative of Malaysia personally. It's surely a missed opportunity not to be in New York, also because I would have loved to sit with you and continue the productive discussion that we have had in the past. I want to particularly salute the states who are, among whom Malaysia, who are members of the Hague Group. So when I think of how to get out of the impasse, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Hague Group. And here are two things. What are the problems? The problems is that today, in the apocalyptic scenario, which there's not just apocalypse doesn't, as I often say, doesn't only means destruction, means revelation. And in the so revealing scenario that Gaza, Palestine, and the fate of the Palestinians have shown us, there is a realization to the not only of how unequal the system, the international system is. It's not one state, one vote. And because eventually it's clear that this is a system dominated not just by the P5, but by and large by the United States. Is this the system that all member states feel comfortable with? But also, what's happening to the Palestinians? Is it today in Gaza and beyond? Is a test for where we are going next. So in the face of this, and with the realization of the causes and the consequences, I think that it's exactly the example given by the states who are the members of the Hague Group that should tell us what is the way out. Because while the majority of member states were discussing the two-state solution, and again, I don't want to sound critical of the two-state solution, but frankly, with the genocide ongoing, is the best thing that member states have at their disposal, recognizing the state of Palestine to do nothing next? I don't think so. And so these states have pointed to the fact that there are concrete obligations that they need to act upon. And this is the thing. I think that the lesson that we take from the Hague Group is that like it or not, Palestine today proves the stage to determine whether we will live in a fully decolonized international world order or not. This is a test, and it's not a test for the Palestinians, it's a test for all of you and all of us. And second, what does it take for member states to think out of the box and to create an alliance within the United Nations system of states which want to resist this bullying? And it takes 191 member states to come together and start discussing measures as others. It's so as to constitute a strength, a unity in the vis-a-vis this alliance between the US and Israel, which of course it has ramification, political, economic, financial ramification. And still, we need to start somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I also align myself very much with the response that my colleague Francesca Albanese just gave. In addition to that, I want to perhaps address an issue on a smaller level, which is the issue of being courageous enough as the UN to call a spade and not succumbing to pressures in order to lessen the impact, perhaps, of what is happening on Israel and those that have aided and abetted it. Now, what do I mean by that? I want to refer to the last report issued by the Secretary General on sexual violence in conflict. I must tell you, I was surprised and disappointed that despite the overwhelming evidence of sexual and gender-based crimes that have been committed against Palestinians, as we said, men, boys, women, girls, not just by one independent mechanism, but by various, not just by one human rights organization that is credible, but various. Still, the UN could not get itself to list Israel in this report as a perpetrator of sexual violence in conflict. Instead, it was put on notice. And this, to me, exemplifies that the UN often shies away from playing the role that it was created to play. The other issue is perhaps building on what my colleague Ben Saul just mentioned. If we look at the ceasefire agreement, the ceasefire agreement also said no word that looks at the gendered ramification of a ceasefire and ending the conflict. It has not mentioned, for example, the need of looking at the role of women and girls in conflict resolution. This again is completely not in line with the Women, Peace and Security agenda that we all just commemorated its 25th anniversary. These again are basic tools that the UN uses, and I have not seen anyone raise any issues about that. So in our day-to-day, I believe the UN and UN member states have to continue really to walk the talk and be consistent, even when it's hard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Alsalem. Do we have I'd like also to take this opportunity to raise 3 questions on the issues mentioned earlier, namely communication and trust, evidence collection in conflict zones, and follow-up action by member states. First, how can we improve public and member state understanding of your reports and counter misinformation in order to build trust and ensure that your conclusions are not distorted or politicized? Second, what are the main obstacles you face in collecting credible evidence from conflict zones, and how can the United Nations better support that work? And third, what specific actions would you like to see from member states now following your latest reports? Ben Saul, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to respond to the previous question as well as I think the last question you just put, which is what can member states do? And I agree, it's absolutely essential to organize through the Hague group, through the United Nations, in different fora, but it's also important for states to ensure they continue to act individually against Israel. And of course, that could include ensuring that there is no military cooperation or provision of weapons. It could include broader diplomatic, economic, and individual sanctions on Israeli political and military leaders until Israel resumes compliance with international law. It could include supporting international legal proceedings. I mean, I know, although many states are supportive of, for example, the International Criminal Court's investigation into Israeli international crimes, as well as International Court of Justice proceedings, contentious and advisory. At the same time, many of those states who support those proceedings are not themselves parties to the International Criminal Court or have not accepted the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice. So I think all states need to lead by example. And if you say you believe in international justice, then show it by joining international justice institutions, accepting their jurisdiction, allowing yourselves to be held to account if you violate international law in your own practices. And that's the best way to send a strong signal to other states that accountability and international justice matter. Support the Commission of Inquiry on Palestine, and Chris can speak, I think, more about the challenges of gathering evidence and what more needs to be done in that area. Continue to investigate and use universal jurisdiction to prosecute any Israelis or for that matter, Palestinians, of course, who may have committed international crimes and turn up in your own territories. Think about through the General Assembly what states did on Russia, which is to set up a mechanism for compensation for war damage. I mean, the votes are there potentially in the General Assembly as they were there on Russia, and that's a really practical, meaningful step that could be taken to make Israel pay where it hurts, that is in the hip pocket, and to pay for, through even seizure of assets of Israel in foreign financial institutions, to pay for the damage it has done. So it's not just a UN issue; it's an issue for each national government to take action as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saul. Is Albanese? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I agree and totally concur with what my colleague Ben Saul just said. It's about complying with international law. We live in a context where, when it comes to Palestine, the International Court of Justice has spoken and spoken and spoken. In 2024, 3 times the International Court of Justice has reminded member states of what they should and should not do. I mean, Israel first and foremost, but also member states. They cannot transfer weapons, including components, and I would go as far as to say, including dual-use items, considering state practice, to a state which is committing violations of international humanitarian law. Therefore, yes, it's absolutely necessary that states align their conduct with international law, because this is what is necessary to preserve the integrity of the system. And because, as it's been said before, the International Court of Justice has also said that the occupation must be dismantled totally and unconditionally. What is the point of uploading a peace plan that allows the occupation to continue in disguise, under disguise, and the genocide of Gaza most likely to continue under the pretense of reconstruction? Because this is my fear, that the reconstruction will lead to a result that the genocide has not been able to achieve yet, which is the forced displacement of the majority of the population, the Palestinian population, from Gaza. So this is why the starting point should not be what the most powerful in the room says, but should be the limits of the law. Israel must be held accountable first and foremost, but also Israel cannot sit at the table to discuss the present and the future of Gaza. Israel should be out. This is a principled way of thinking. And I'm paralyzed by the thought that all member states in the United Nations cannot stand by those principles because of, again, bullying inside the United Nations. This is not a situation that requires intelligence. It requires courage. And how come 191 members of the United Nations cannot isolate the two which are bringing havoc on the entire system, and none of us will be spared if this situation continues. There is really a war that looms at the horizon, and it's going to be one with means and technologies of the 21st century. It's going to be really dangerous. And I feel more and more like Cassandra, keeping on saying things that sound horrible and far-fetched to happen, and they happen. It's 2 years that I say the goal of Israel is in Gaza is to displace the Palestinians, destroying everything they leave behind. And this is what's happening. So I really beg each member state who's listening to us to start the virtuous path of complying with international law and helping to end the occupation by cutting ties with Israel, military, diplomatic, economic, and other ties, end the occupation, make the genocide accountable, and then end apartheid. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Albanese. Alsalem?
I wish to add just one point to the list of proposals presented by my colleague Ben Saul. And it is an issue that also Francesca has written on extensively, but that needs to also be followed up with more rigor and more determination, which is also holding businesses accountable for their roles in this genocide. And also the media. One of your questions, Mr. Chair, was about misrepresentations. And I'm afraid that what we have seen in this unfolding genocide regarding the role of the media in deliberately and maliciously repeating and diffusing misinformation, disinformation, large-scale lies about what happened on October 7th. And the scale of the violence and the kind of violence that was committed as a precursor and as a justification for the genocide to happen. And I think that if we let this one slide, this is going to become the blueprint in the future. And I am following, though on a much smaller scale, what the role of the media is currently also regarding the demonization of migrant communities in different countries, and also misinforming and spreading lies and painting migrant communities in a way as the barbaric foreigner that is out there to enslave the women of the country and to sexually abuse them. So as a justification to build sort of a consensus to shutting doors, to deporting persons. And this, I feel, the role of the media has not been sufficiently talked about in international fora. And the biggest example of that is exactly what we have seen after October 7th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Alsalem. I would like now to give the floor to Rapporteur Minister Mansour, if you have additional comments.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Is this like now we're concluding, the meeting? Is that why you're asking me?
Do you have any question, Mr. Mansour?
No, but you see, I just want to raise our good colleagues who have raised tremendous and powerful, comments and proposals. But I believe also that all the successful experiences that we've witnessed during the struggle against colonialism and apartheid in South Africa. And Francesca is absolutely right. She said that Nelson Mandela said that the liberation of South Africa is not complete until the Palestinian liberation takes place. All these things are correct, but also as a student listening and studying from the fabulous book of Struggle Against Apartheid in South Africa, master leader leading that struggle, Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela did not restrict himself one mode of struggle, and he was the master in creating support to the just cause of South Africa, put an end to apartheid. He started by unifying countries, the southern part of Africa, then unifying all of Africa around, the just struggle of the people of South Africa. Then the non-aligned movement, the three continents, Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And then he succeeded with the ANC and the movement in South Africa in making a tilting, which started in Ireland with a simple worker who sell the oranges from South Africa supermarket, Ireland. And then that spark spread to make the tilt of Africa, of Europe, to support Africa, and then both of the struggles sailed in the direction of the United States. Fragment, the denial of the support, just struggle of South African, and then put an end to apartheid. So, knowing this realism of the struggle, and also the realism of the struggle combined with principles of Mahatma Gandhi, for example, would lead us not to have to restrict ourselves to only in one small area and expect from the rest to be complete from the beginning, but take the more productive approach of convincing people as they move forward, give more to the just struggle, especially in the practical aspect of supporting and to keep accumulating in order really to apply the physics principle that quantitative changes will eventually lead to a qualitative shift and therefore the complete collapse of the apartheid system in that case. I know that all of us are extremely angry and frustrated, and of course, the ones that have a legitimate claim be more frustrated and angry than all of us, which is the Palestinian people, because they are paying the ultimate price, especially in the Gaza Strip. So therefore, what I'm trying to say, there are many smaller steps that have been taking place in the international community, because disarming or not sending weapons to Israel is not only restricted to members that do not have weapons among the Hague group, the Madrid group, especially Spain, is among the leaders in working for not sending weapons to Israel, not allowing planes carrying weapons to use Spanish airport or ships carrying weapons pass through the ports of Spain. Even the small step of Germany not sending weapons to be used in killing Palestinians in Gaza. Some might think that these are small, not important steps, but in the process of accumulation, in order really to succeed in defeating this illegal, abhorrent occupation system, which is conducting, genocide and which is building an apartheid, I think it requires a collective genius from all of us, not to restrict the struggle to only one small forum. And even within the UN, which is the house of the majority of countries that are vulnerable and poor, that are trying their best to stand with the Palestinian people, and to vote with the Palestinian people, although that is not leading to the end of genocide, I think it would be wiser, in my humble opinion, that, let us see what steps countries are able to do and to appreciate these steps and to try to encourage them to take additional steps. I think that this is the approach that, that our brilliant leader in this struggle, which is Nelson Mandela, that followed, and that, we are trying as much as possible to follow the same path in order to get closer, putting an end to this illegal occupation, to have freedom for the Palestinian people. And at the end of the day, as we all agree, to apply international law and the principles in the Charter, it is the Palestinian people in exercising their right to self-determination. It is up to them to decide what is good for them, and we should accept it as we accept the right of self-determination to be applied to all nations and to all people. I think that, Francesca Albanese is a good friend of mine, and I love her spirit, and I love her fighting spirit. So, I was born in the Palestine question. It runs into my DNA from my families, from my father, from my uncles, from all of my relatives, from all the people that sometimes I cannot contain myself describing their pain in Gaza, especially the children. But all of these things is not allowing me to continue using only my emotions, but to use my mind to navigate in a brilliant way, especially in a collective way, by all of the Palestinians, the children, women, including everyone, and the massive support that we have from all of you and the hundreds of millions who are in the streets. We need to make all of that come together with everyone, with every group, with every force. We need to succeed, and we need to put an end to this tragedy. I listen to you very closely. I know that all of you say everything that you say from the bottom of your hearts and from the love to the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian. But yet, in the same time, we need to get closer to the end line, and we need to be as creative as possible in our collective genius mind, all of us, in order really to reach the point of Palestinian people to exercise self-determination with all of the components as it was articulated by the ICJ, in its historic advisory. We are not going to be the exception to the rule. We are like the South African. We are like the Namibian. We are like everyone that struggled for their own freedom through the complexity of the path that they went through. With those who were approving international law halfway, quarter of the way, 100% of the way, I accept always I need in order to reach the moment of freedom for the Palestinian people. And as Martin Luther King, when he said, free at last, want to be free at last. And I believe that all of your ideas are wonderful, but trust the Palestinians, because they are in the trenches. They are the ones who are suffering, and they are the ones who are saying today, particularly in Gaza, we want to live one peace. We want to stop the killing, because we want to take care of our children. We have to listen to them very closely. And even if, as our friend from England said, that this agreement or the ideas of President Trump, you can shred them to pieces, and he analyzed it correctly. But yet, in the same time, if there is a component of it that says stop the killing of the Palestinians in Gaza, I want to stop it. Our people want to stop it. We have 1 million children in Gaza to save them. Those who were killed, my heart, leads to them, but I cannot bring them back to life. But I can do something about saving the 1 million Palestinian children, and I want to save them in order to give them hope, their dreams, and to live in Palestine. So it is complicated. I don't know if any one of us have a silver bullet to this conflict. There is no silver bullet. all the conflicts that we all talk about, especially South Africa, there was no silver bullet. It was an accumulation process that eventually led to the quality of change. I say that with complete sincerity, appreciation of what you do, and as a friend, and as also a person that is heavily connected to the struggle of the Palestinian people at the UN. At the UN, we are not isolated. Regardless of what that thug, the Israeli ambassador, would say, including what he said to you, Francesca, that thug who is completely isolated and he should be thrown outside the UN, is not the one who is dictating the pace at the United Nations. It is the great majority of countries and people who admire the Palestinian and who are trying to do what they can do in order to see the Freedom Day of the Palestine get closer, not to go far away. But things are complicated. The United States of America is not a small, powerful country. We need to be collectively genius how we navigate through it and not to allow them to impose on us what we don't want, but succeed with the power of all nations and with the power of all of you and the hundreds of millions in the street, succeed in what Nelson Mandela accomplished. We are not the exception of the rule. We are the children of Nelson Mandela. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Minister Mansour. Our distinguished briefers, do you want to take the floor for comment, also final comment? No? Like we are coming to the end of this meeting, I just want to thank you again for your active participation today, and thank you again for those. Thanks again for those who are following us on UN Web TV. Your accounts have been enlightening and have once again highlighted the urgent need to address the issue of accountability for the crimes perpetrated against Palestinians and to finally end the Israeli occupation. We have many groups that has the Hague group, the Madrid group, and also the Global Alliance, and also we need to coordinate and try to find out how we can all work together with the Special Rapporteur in order to bring more clarity and impact on the ground. Events like today play an essential role in exposing the staggering level of suffering affecting Palestinian people. And our discussions also reminded us that we, the international community, civil society, and individuals alike must collectively be relentless in continuing to advocate for a just and peaceful solution to the question of Palestine. This will only be accomplished with an end to the Israeli occupation that began in 1967 and the realization of self-determination and independence of the Palestinian people. The world cannot fail the Palestinian people and their legitimate aspirations for freedom. Before closing, I would like to make sure again that there is no hand raised. Very good. Thank you very much. And again, Minister Mansour, if there is no additional demand for the floor coming from you, no. So thank you very much for this wonderful meeting. Thank you, Miss Reem Alsalem. Thank you, Mrs. Francesca Albanese. Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much. And The meeting is adjourned.